Welcome to Dirt, Sweat, and Gears and the House of Broken Import Shitboxes. We're here with the Facebook Marketplace Miata yet again, and if you've been following this saga, we actually got the car on the road running and driving with new suspension and alignment. It drives really great, except there were a few little problems. The first being a fuel problem. Felt like I wasn't getting enough fuel at idle and at lower RPMs. And the other being that I just had a feeling, even though the car drove just fine, I just had a suspicion that there was something up with the clutch. There was, I don't know how to say it, but the clutch felt fine. The car shifted fine. It was a little noisy, and I attribute that to the Motocraft MTF that I had in the transmission. The car actually calls for 80-90 gear oil. So that's also something that is on my short list. But when it comes to the clutch itself, it was really just a suspicion. Just based on all of the crap and all of the shoddy workmanship that I've seen on this car so far, I did not trust that clutch to last more than a few hundred miles. And boy, was I not disappointed. I had bought a clutch kit and I had every intention of doing it myself, but I got underneath the car and I felt like I was crawling into a coffin. So I decided that it would be better if I took this to a shop where they could do it on a lift and knock it out in a few hours. First of all, I got the wrong clutch kit. I got a 94 clutch kit. This is a 90 transmission. So my mistake, I ended up having to run out and get a clutch kit from O'Reilly Auto, which, it's fine. I would have really preferred an XCD clutch, but this will get me wherever I need to go. It'll last as long as I need it to last. Definitely last until I decide to do something really stupid with this car. So when I got the new clutch kit, the mechanic at the shop saw something that was so bad, he actually took a picture of it. And that is, it appears to be that the previous owner who had done this clutch just smeared RTV all over the place. It was bad. Aside from that, the transmission had a leak on the output seal. The input shaft seal looked okay, so we decided not to touch it. I didn't want to risk it, being that I got the wrong clutch pack. I didn't want to risk that I also got the wrong input shaft seal or something else, and then I'd be really screwed. So I left that, he put it back together, and I came to drive the car home, and the shifter felt terrible. Now, I think what happened was when the mechanic was tilting the transmission out and turning it around and everything, the fluid just drained out of the turret. That's an easy fix. Let's go take a look. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is not the mechanic's fault. I took the center console off here, and you can see that, first of all, we got a broken bolt here. I know the mechanic didn't do that. I mean, given that we saw RTV all over the rear main seal, I'm going to go ahead and say the mechanic isn't the one that did that. The shifter itself is very hard to control. It's very notchy, and I believe that is because, at least initially, believe that was because the transmission oil had drained out of the turret when he was turning it, tilting it, and moving it around. So that is not really a big deal to fill it, but it actually gets worse. Let's take this off. All right, so we have the shifter out, and I think I'm missing something. There is definitely supposed to be something here that I do not have. The ball itself seems to be a little bit rusty, but I can clean that up. This ring and wave washer, it's time to replace that. There is no boot at all here. That's a problem. And inside here, see, we have another ring and wave washer underneath. It's pretty gross in here. So, yeah, I do see some fluid way down at the bottom. You can just see it down there. But yeah, there is definitely not enough fluid there. So that's why it is shifting so poorly. And I believe I'm either missing something or it's dropped down in here. I think it's dropped down. Yep, I feel it. That's it. That's supposed to be on the shifter itself. This piece that's coming up right now, that's supposed to be on the shifter itself. So I ordered a shift kit, and we will be replacing this. So I have to recover that. I'm going to have to pull this ring and wave washer out. That's actually really easy. But before I do this, I mean, I'm going to pull this out. But before I pull this ring and wave washer out, I got to drill this out. Now, I have to drill this out without getting metal shavings in here. I don't think that's going to be the biggest problem in the world, but I definitely want to not do that if I can avoid it. So I'm going to pull this out. We're going to put the shifter back in. I'm going to cover up what should have a rubber bushing with tape, and then we're going to drill this out and re-tap it, because this is not acceptable. Just these 2 points, not okay. So my wife's job starts in 2 days, and I don't think she's taking this car on the first day. I don't think she's going to start taking this car until next week. But at least the Prelude runs really well. Okay, so I did the fuel pump, and well, I didn't want to stop and record mid-process, because when I had all that open, I had 8 gallons worth of fuel just kind of venting up and into my lungs. So I really wanted to get this project done before I pass out. So that's why I didn't stop. Some lessons learned. First thing, as I'm sure you're aware if you're a Miata owner, behind this panel is the fuel tank. If you drop something in there, you're never going to see it again. Luckily, I only dropped one of these outer screws, so I didn't make an emergency run to the hardware store to match up one of the fuel screws. So, and it didn't drop inside the tank. It was before I pulled the pump out. So you definitely want to make sure you set your screws way far away from the hole, like way over there or on a cart or something, somewhere that is not right next to the hole. Second thing I learned, don't do any work with fuel right after you drilled out a bolt hole and got a bunch of metal shavings in your hands. The metal shavings were bad enough. Pouring gasoline into an open wound is not recommended. 1 out of 5 stars. Over here at the fuel pump, well, the remains of the old fuel pump, I have some extra parts, and I am fairly certain that is because this fuel pump is a generic fit for multiple different cars. So I'm not terribly worried that I have extra parts. I did not need to crimp and splice a new connector because the connector that was on it fit the new pump. So I really just had to fit the new sock on with all of the little fittings that came off of the old pump. So as I was taking it apart, I was just kind of taking note of what came out and what orientation it was in, and put it back together in the reverse order. The little rubber band down there, that snapped. So I went inside and did a little bit of research and discovered everyone just replaces them with zip ties. So I replaced the rubber band with a zip tie. And I had to get a new fuel pump gasket separately from the fuel pump itself. So it wasn't expensive, it was just an extra thing I had to order. So now that that's all done, before I clean this mess up, let's see if it worked. I am not at all worried about starting up the car without a shifter, because we're not going anywhere. Okay, I'm going to keep the clutch in just in case. Oh, that's way better. Yeah, I think that solved all of my fuel problems. I think I'm good now. All right, next up is to put that back together with the new kit. And so that's going to arrive hopefully sooner than later. But in the meantime, I am going to, I guess I can drain and fill the transmission oil. I'm going to start by saying none of this was fun. We'll get to why in just a second. First of all, let's talk about what little oil was in there. You can see in here, it was quite disgusting. I don't know if it was ancient gear oil or if it was actual axle grease. I don't know, but I ended up flushing it 3 times in order to have the transmission turret clean. I used Unicorn Tears. Why? Because I have it. I didn't have to buy it, so I figured I would just use this expensive ass bottle because, well, I'm not going to use it on anything else. At least not in the foreseeable future. So let's get to the actual transmission turret itself. See here, I had to drill out that hole, and that's the part that was not fun. I had to drill it out from an M6 to an M8. I first tried to drill it out to an M7, but somehow, I don't know if I screwed up drilling or if I screwed up threading, but I had to step up again to an M8. And let me tell you, there is not much aluminum to work with here. So, best advice I can give is to not break bolts in your transmission turret. I don't know if I can replace this thing without having to drop the whole transmission and rebuild it or just put in a whole transmission, but I barely got this to work. And you see here, I've got 3 washers here holding it up, and that's because the bolt itself, even though it was a really short bolt, was still bottoming out on the hole that I had drilled and threaded. And so I was kind of afraid to drill any more, so I went ahead and just put these washers on. And let me show you just how close it gets when I put it in reverse. You see here? This barely clears the bolt itself when it's in reverse. But it does clear. You know, lucky is a word that I do not use very often to describe myself. And while I am certainly very unlucky to be in this situation in the first place, I gotta say, in terms of fixing it, this is pretty lucky. It also so happens that the paper gasket that is on the underside of this plate here tore while I was drilling out the hole to fit the M8 bolt through the plate. So I had to just clean out as much of that paper gasket as I could. I replaced it with Ultra Black RTV, and I think that's just going to hold as long as I need it to just fine. But wow, did I ever get lucky. So first, right off the bat, it feels really good with the Unicorn Tears oil that I put in there. So I am optimistic about this. Now that I have a new clutch, now that I have a new transmission turret assembly put back together and done the right way, let's finish this off and take this car for hopefully the last test drive before it just becomes driving. Alright, back to driving in hard mode with no mount on my phone. I promise I'll get that fixed as soon as I can, hopefully before my next video. But what are my first impressions here? Okay, first off, I am really glad I did this. This car drives so much better in every way now that I've done this clutch and transmission work and shifter work. Just really, really happy. The noise is almost gone because I replaced the transmission oil with 80/90 gear oil, which is what is called for underneath the hood. So I'm using what the car recommends. and I'm not disappointed. It sounds much, much better. The whine is, I mean, you barely hear it. You have to listen for it if you hear it, in order to hear it. So it's into what I consider normal. The clutch feels so much better. The old clutch wasn't bad. It didn't feel bad anyway. The flywheel was ready to explode, but the engagement is definitely better. The shifter work that I did, I'm very happy with. That's probably the most dramatic difference, because there was almost no fluid in the transmission turret. So that alone made most of the difference, I think. But also, I got the upgraded pivot ball bushing thing with the metal pivot ball that previously was plastic or nylon. So that, I think, helped things. The throwing gears around feels much better. I'm not binding. I'm not feeling any kind of resistance. It's still pretty boxy, but I'm so used to that with the Prelude that it feels normal to me. It feels correct to me to have a nice tight shift gate. It feels good. I don't speed shift, so I'm not slamming gears. So I haven't had any grinding. So, but that's just because of the way I shift. I'm not doing drag races or anything like that. So that's just the style of driving. I think I'm just naturally, because of the Prelude, you can't speed shift the Prelude. So I just got so used to it between the Prelude and the Jeep that I don't slam gears really. I also did the work on the fuel system. I replaced the fuel pump and the fuel filter. That was not a dramatic difference. The power band feels more or less the same. It's still a little doggish before 4,000 RPMs. And then it picks back up and kicks up all the way to redline. So it's not bad. It's a lot less stally and temperamental going up hills and getting off the line. So that's, I think, an improvement. And I noticed that, I believe, when I did the fuel filter. So that may have been the culprit. The fuel pump was probably fine, but now I know it's fine because it's new. So I'm still really glad I did that. Everything feels great on this car. The steering wheel feels disgusting because it's all cracked and worn. But in terms of actual driving experience, I think this car drives like it's supposed to. Now, from here, it's just about improving it. So it is. I'm calling this mission accomplished. This is a mechanically sorted car. I do want to stiffen up the chassis. Let me pass this Jeep. Thank you. Oh yeah. Now I can throw it around a little bit now that this Jeep is out of the way. I'm probably gonna launch my phone off a cliff. Yep. I really need to do this with a phone mount because my phone's just flopping around, going all over the place. It's just gonna go right off a cliff if I take a hard turn. So let me go ahead and check in with you when I make a stop. So here we are in the beautiful Angeles National Forest. I didn't want to take the full loop, so I only came out a few miles. I also heard something. I think I hit a rock or something. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't like, you know, a lug nut falling off or something. So I figured this is a good opportunity to stop, check everything out before I turn around and go back and wrap up this week's video. So I'm really glad I did all of this. This was a great experience. It was a complete waste of money, I can tell you that, but I got to build a Miata, and that is really cool. This car is now, I believe, mechanically sorted. It certainly runs better than it looks, but looks can be addressed later on. We don't need a car to look good to travel across the city to go to work. And that's exactly what my wife needs right now, and that's what she's got. Well, that's going to wrap up this week's video. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you see, like, share, subscribe, follow, comment. And if you don't like what you see, leave me a comment while I get eaten by flies.